Jefferson Thomas said, "I had no reason to think that the peaceful, quiet place where I could grow up could change so drastically." Jefferson Thomas was a part of the Little Rock Nine. They were a group of high schoolers that stood up for equal rights in schools by transferring into an all-white school. Little Rock Nine is the best example of perseverance in the civil rights movement because they believed in what they were fighting in for so much that even though they were abused, they kept fighting so hard that even the U.S. Army had to be involved, and if they did not win the fight, then the school system would be in debt. The Little Rock Nine were a group of students that went through a lot of abuse and traumatic experiences. The students at the school constantly harassed them and the people of the city. To start off their journey, the governor of Little Rock, Arizona, Governor Frabos, made it impossible for them to go to school on the first day. "If we have honestly acknowledged our pain but shared past, then we have reconciled," said Elizabeth Eckforth, one of the nine, who you can infer that she went through a lot of awful experiences but is glad she changed things for the better. They were bullied ruthlessly. One of the nine, they were almost burned by her fellow students with paper in a bathroom stall. They moved closer and closer, and somebody started yelling, "Drag her over to this tree, let's take care of that N-word." This is what the nine had to deal with on a regular basis. They also couldn't do anything about it, because if they did, they would get suspended or expelled. When they got out of school, they were getting verbally abused by the protests of the people in the city, which were sometimes very violent. The perseverance was so hard to do that even the government had to intervene. Little Rock Nine was very fast to make an impact on the U.S. The influence of some laws, the government was on their side, and the military was at the Nine's disposal. The U.S. saw the way that the government was treating them and that they should help change that. The president soon sent a portion of the troops to Little Rock to help. The Supreme Court was also in the Nine's corner with the president. With over half the government on their side, they had all the supplies to make a big impact on how the school system worked. The Supreme Court also later passed a law that the Nine helped greatly influence on the school system. This was a major event because most of the government was white supremacist at the time, so the Nine was changing the whole judicial branch. Not only did they do that, but they also opened up better chances for an African American to be in the government. The country was watching as African American teenagers were changing U.S. history in the future. They were not only opening opportunities for African American people in the government, they were also opening opportunities for African American people in the school systems. Although the Nine made a lot of impressive imprints on the government, they also made a big economic impact. They opened up the chance for cities to not only have one school, for teachers to be paid better, and for the cities to function better. The Nine succeeded in having equal school rights for both races. This was important because schools didn't have to pay for two different schools, only one. The one main school would now have more money to pay for their teachers and for the overall quality of the school. The town could also use the school's money to pay for better electricity, pipe systems, grades, and overall better of the community. They also helped with bettering of the main school, including teachers getting paid better, and African American people in the workforce could be paid better too. If the city chooses, they could give a raise to African American people, which would mean the race gap would get closer together. They were using different ways to better the race gap, but what was the first thing that could have shown the Nine that something needed to change was the Jim Crow laws. The Jim Crow laws were a set of laws that separated African Americans from white people. They started in the 1860s, and the first one was actually for Arizona. The law that the Nine protested was the third one, which was for schools to uphold the racial segregation of schools as originally authorized in 1869. This almost took 100 years to figure out that this was an unconstitutional law. Even just going to the bathroom was segregated. Since the Nine bettered the economy, had the government on their side, helped with desegregation in life, and persevered, shows that they were fighting for what was. So what happened to the Nine after high school? All of the Nine pursued college and mainly went on to become a journalist. Some journalists include Melba Patolito, Minnie Jean Brown Trickey, and Jefferson Thomas. 2 of the 9 were into military or law enforcement. This would include Elizabeth Eckford and Thelma Mothershed. Most of the other 9 were in the school system or in sociology. Sadly, one of the 9 passed away when they were 67 out of pancreatic cancer in 2010. I think that the 9 was very accomplished with their life after Little Rock 9. Let's focus on that and go a little deeper. First, Melba Patilio had an internship when she was 17 for a newspaper, and she has a master's and doctorate from college. She lives in San Francisco, and she teaches about journalism to college students. Here's Ernest Green, and when he was 24, he got an apprenticeship to help with minority women with career development issues. He worked for a school until it shut down in 2015 and lives in Washington, D.C. Then there's Minnie Jane Brown Trickey, who went to college for journalism, was a part of the 2009 Clinton administration, and gave a speech at Malala's award ceremony. Terrence Roberts, who went to USC for sociology, UCLA for social welfare, and has a doctorate in physiology. He used to work at colleges before he retired in 2008. Carlotta Walls Lanier lives in Colorado and graduated from Northern Colorado and works at her own brokerage agency. Before Jefferson Thomas died, he went to LA for college and then moved to Ohio with his wife. Gloria Ray Carlmark went to college for chemistry and math, and she graduated and then moved to the Netherlands and Sweden, where she journaled and did newspapers. Thelma Mothershed went to college in Illinois, worked in law enforcement, was a teacher, retired, and now lives in Little Rock. Elizabeth Eckford was a waitress, history teacher, welfare worker, unemployment and employment interviewer, and in the military. Now she lives in Little Rock. From getting abused to supported by the government to making the economy stronger shows that Little Rock 9 was one of the most impressive movements. While their protests, they were getting abused and having not to fight back. This was very hard, but they persisted with a little help from the government. The fact that the US government had to get involved is enough to state that they were standing up for what was right, and it was hard. Since they were fighting to prove that people were all the same, and they succeeded, this meant that there would be more money to put into other things around the town. They were faced by 100 years of segregation laws and daily ruthlessness in their lives, but that doesn't mean that they stopped fighting. The Little Rock 9's perseverance, hope from the government, and the fact that they bettered the community shows that they are one of the most important protests from the civil rights movement.